Phoebe Little. So I found myself there on a cliff in Cape Breton, dressed in my black funeral clothes, looking out towards the horizon, reflecting on the reality that in exactly a week I would be further away from this place than I had ever been before. And also that with all my living ties gone, I had no idea when, if ever, I would return. As much as I've tried to compartmentalize it, the death of my grandmother and the advancing terminal illness and hospice of my grandfather has colored everything about my summer. I have found myself awake at night, racked with guilt that I didn't call my grandmother one last time, that I didn't take advantage of my grandfather's stories when he still had the memory to tell them. I have found myself full of enormous regret that I never let them see the authentic version of myself. I have found myself terrified of not having cell service in a way that myself 6 months ago would have rolled my eyes at. I have found myself bawling in a Motel 6 in Page, Arizona. But I have also found myself getting through it. I have found myself feeling sad and anxious, but still learning and listening and growing and feeling joy. I have found my memories of my grandparents are closer to the surface of my mind than ever before. And I find myself taking notice of the little things that remind me of them. I found myself settling into the notion that neither my grandfather or my grandmother would want me to grieve them for too long or miss out on any experience or lesson on their behalf. I have found my life feeling less fractured and more normal. I have found myself surrounded by people who listen and care and dry my tears. I have found myself feeling safe and loved. I have found myself no longer viewing my local landscape as super alien. I have found myself laughing. I have found myself coming out of my shell. I have found myself healing. I have found myself exploring. I have found myself dancing to ABBA. I have found myself, admittedly after several attempts, successfully getting biscuits to rise at 7,000 feet altitude. And sometimes I'm still sad and overwhelmed, but it's less and less. In one of my journal entries from our river trip, I wrote that this summer sometimes feels like the montage at the end of my indie coming-of-age film. So imagine Canadian folk rock legend Gord Downey and his band, The Tragically Hip, softly singing a song as I conclude my epilogue. I am changed, the same person I've always been, but wiser, more complex, and more full than I've ever been. It's partially the place, completely unlike and presenting different challenges than anywhere I've ever been before. It's partially the people. Every single one of them has challenged me to think deeper, ask more questions, and expand my own point of view. It's partially the curriculum, which has exposed me to ideas I've never thought to think about before. And it's partially having to deal with all the things going on with my own family. It's partially myself, my own internal drive to challenge myself, grow, and evolve. It's all these things. Allow me to be incredibly sentimental for a moment. I am by no means finished with my evolution. None of us are. There's so much ahead, so many more challenges, and so much joy. But that's the future. For right now, I feel incredibly proud of every single one of us, super hopeful, very full of veggie burgers, and overwhelmingly grateful to be here right now.